We are live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for another one of your favorite Cowbell Kingdom podcasts. Matt George from Sports 1140 KHTK, live from my living room, and Leo Beas from Cowbell Kingdom. You know him well. You've seen his name in the Sacramento Bee, and you've seen his name being floated around this and that over the past weekend. I've managed to slide under the radar, but Leo's been out there in the crossfire. Call him the hero and call me the coward, whatever you want to be doing. But not really much to be talking about today, is there, Leo?
Not much at all, man. It's going to be an action-packed show, and we will be as transparent as possible, like we always have. So, let's just cut to the chase.
Yeah, it was a quiet weekend. Nothing really happened. The Kings played twice, and that was about it. I wish that were the case, but unfortunately, it was not. Some things that have been brewing for a while kind of came to a head, and we'll try to walk you through and explain everything as well as possible, as much as possible. You're talking to or listening to two people that are constantly in the locker room. We're talking in the locker room after almost every single game. I think there's 2 games that I've missed and maybe 2 or 3 games that Leo has missed totally. We are in the locker room. We are around this and interact with this every single day or every single Kings home game.
We were sick. Let's just be honest.
Well, I mean, if we're sick or if we're tired, we try to, well, either way, rain or shine, we try and be there as much as possible. But the point is we are there and we've seen it and we've interacted with it. And we've hopefully been able to, or will be able to give you a flair and give you an idea of really what has been going on with the Sacramento Kings in the locker room. And I guess we just started off with setting the scene that really caused everything, which was on Monday, a game that neither Leo and I were at, a Monday as in a week from today, or a week ago from today. Andy Furillo, after writing a column, he is a columnist for the Sacramento Bee. He is not a beat writer like Jason Jones. Andy Furillo's job, much like Aileen Voisin, their jobs for the Sacramento Bee are to write opinionated pieces. That's why they're called columnists, not beat writers or reporters. There's a difference. So you have to know that going into it. Andy wrote one of his many columns that is critical of DeMarcus Cousins. He and Aileen have both kind of made a career out of being critical over DeMarcus Cousins over the past few years. And he wrote a column addressing the situation between Matt Barnes and DeMarcus Cousins and what happened at the New York club, which is kind of old news now with everything that has come out. We're still waiting to find out where that's going to go or what's going to happen with the pending lawsuit going on involving both DeMarcus Cousins and Matt Barnes. We haven't really heard anything, any kind of reports, which I suppose is a good thing. But Andy wanted to address that incident in his column, talking about how both Cousins and Barnes needed to find better places to hang out. And you have to understand DeMarcus Cousins is one who does not take criticism lightly, and that's not a negative thing necessarily. If it's constructive criticism, a lot of times he takes it to heart and tries to grow and learn from that, as coaches and teammates can point out. But there's also the negative criticism that he has a tough time dealing with. This criticism that he's received from Andy has been met with a lot of frustration and anger and bad blood over the past couple of years. So when Andy wrote this article, naturally Cousins was going to be the one to read it because he reads everything. And he, I'm sure, took offense to it. But what really boiled things over was when Andy in the column mentioned another incident that happened in May when DeMarcus Cousins and his brother, Jaleel Cousins, were got involved in an altercation in a was it Tampa Bay nightclub, I believe it was, an altercation which Cousins' brother was actually involved. Cousins was pulled out and was not a figurehead in the incident at all. But Andy brought that up, mentioning Cousins' brother. And as you saw, if you haven't seen the video, I'm very shocked. You can go see it. It's all over the place. Just type in DeMarcus Cousins. But if you've seen what happened, you can tell the frustration came from Cousins having a feeling like he needed to defend his family. And things just boiled over, things that had been brewing for quite a while. Leo, before we really get into where it comes into play with us and with you and with the article specifically, just your opinions on the relationship between Andy and DeMarcus, and have you seen this brewing for a while? and just your thoughts on Andy's article first and foremost.
Yeah. Before I get into that, let me be very clear, and it's highlighted right now. I screen shared the whole thing. I've been very clear about this. I have neither written nor mentioned Cousins' brother or family in any way, shape, or form. I'm glad I got that out the way, guys. Now, I have seen this relationship really, it's gotten worse over the years. And it's one of those situations where instead of talking it out like adults, like real men should, they don't. And a lot of it, talking firsthand and experiencing what we have experienced, DeMarcus, for whatever reason, just doesn't want to talk it out. And I don't know if Andy has reached out to him like I have and like we have, really, but it's not a good look for the organization to really, like, in the eyes of the national audience right now, it's the Kings versus the B, and it shouldn't be that way.
And that's something that actually Grant Napier pointed out. He just got off the air because of Monday Night Football, had to boot him off because I'm sure he would have gone for 6, 7, 8 hours if he could, addressing everything going on. And that was one of his key points, which a lot of media, and my show is guilty of this, my show being the morning show at KHDK, is guilty of painting this picture of Sacramento Kings versus the Sacramento Bee, or DeMarcus Cousins versus the Sacramento Bee. And in the grand scheme of things, it can be interpreted that way. But if it is interpreted that way, I think for both sides, you're missing the point, because for Cousins, I think this is a manner of respect and ethical journalism, which he feels he has not been treated fairly by Andy and by Aileen and by members of the Sacramento Bee in the past. And yes, you can say fairly, you can say that they have been severely critical, and you and I and many others agree that there are certain areas that both Aileen and Andy have been critical of Cousins that weren't necessarily fair or were a little uncalled for. Maybe they were not necessarily reaching for low-hanging fruit, but almost creating fruit that wasn't necessarily there. A perfect example is Aileen talking about Cousins' weight in a recent column, maybe a little less than a month ago. Things like that, these two columnists have had a history of. And let me make it perfectly clear. I interact with Aileen, and I have a better relationship with Andy than I do with Aileen. And Andy has been nothing but respectful, kind, encouraging to me throughout my career. He's very open to talk about these things, but he has an eye for the critical, and he also has a short level of patience now for the kind of player that DeMarcus Cousins is, because we have seen very little change, at least in the outburst and the anger and the frustration category, out of him over his career. But to tie all this back in together, for it to be painted as Cousins versus the Bee is wrong for both sides, because Cousins wants to be respected and wants to have his family taken care of. And Andy, I believe, first and foremost, just wants to do his job. Now, if the Sacramento Bee had ulterior motives, which we don't know, but if they had motives to where they released this article in the hopes that DeMarcus Cousins would be suspended, or that this could somehow affect the Kings trading DeMarcus Cousins, then you get into wishy-washy waters. But that we just simply don't know.
Yeah, and I do want to bring in and address the Instagram crowd, which a lot of them are DeMarcus supporters. And, I hate to say it, but you guys really need to listen, inform yourselves, and really take a look at the situation, because I don't like the fact that people think for some reason that I have talked about Cousins' brother or family, because I haven't, okay? And I'm looking right at you guys, so stop trying to blame me for that. I have nothing to do with that, okay, whatsoever.
Well, I think now would be a good time then, if we're going to just take that route, because we can't beat around the bush too long. We'll try and continue to paint the picture out as we go. However, it's important, I believe, for us to really share our side of the story. And Leo, you released an article not too long ago explaining, because your name was brought up in the Sacramento Bee article because of the confrontations that you have had with DeMarcus in the near, I should say, that have happened recently. So I know you put it really well into words, and I encourage everybody to go and read that article just to get an idea of where Leo and Cowbell Kingdom is coming from, and that includes me. However, I want to give you the opportunity right now, Leo, to really explain that article and maybe get to put other things out and talk other things out that you couldn't necessarily do in writing in that particular article.
Yeah, I just want all these haters really to read the column. And I'm saying this in a nice way. Just read the column and inform yourselves, man. I mean, I know you love DeMarcus Cousins, but it's to the point where you don't really want to listen to anyone. Like, DeMarcus Cousins is some kind of an angel to these people, you know, and that's not the case. I understand, and he has been magnificent. Like, if you read Cowbell Kingdom, we have covered a lot of good stuff. Everyone covers all the things he does in the community. But for you to come here and tell me that all we do is negative stuff, you're lying to yourselves, because we're pretty objective about how we do things, right, Matt? And it's just one of those things where, you know, you just have to listen and just read all this stuff and all this negativity. But the fact of the matter is, he has a lot of fault. Why? Because the Sacramento Kings organization has enabled him to do what he has wanted for the last 6 years, and nothing has changed. He will continue to do what he wants because this is how it is. And I saw on Twitter, I think it's from a ESPN reporter here locally, that he said the reason why, and I don't believe this, but the reason why DeMarcus Cousins loves Sacramento is because he is in a situation where nobody can tell him anything. He's full of enablers, and he's getting paid millions upon millions to be here. So in some sense, that makes sense. Like, if DeMarcus Cousins would be in any other market right now, New York, LA, like, he would literally be getting into trouble every single time, because if he cannot take the Sacramento Bee, I just don't know what to say about that, man. I mean, these guys in bigger markets are sharks, okay? So, you know, I see all these comments and all this negativity right now on Instagram, and, you know, it's about 20% of the DMC supporters, because about 80%, at least from all the feedback that I've been seeing, and it's been thousands upon thousands of comments, you know, they have supported everything that we have done and how we have approached the entire situation. So you guys should really inform yourselves, and, you know, stop making excuses for this guy, because the fact of the matter is, there are better ways of handling your situation, not yelling at someone in the locker room, trying to embarrass them, because that's not what a pro does. What a pro would do is pull him aside, talk to him, ask, and just, you don't have to agree with it, but you do have to respect it. Like, and another thing, Andy is a columnist. He gets paid to give his opinion. So it's not like he's a reporter. He is a columnist, and people just know how to decipher these things, man.
Well, let me interrupt you really quick so we can backtrack here, because a lot of people have learned that there have been confrontations between Cowbell Kingdom and DeMarcus Cousins, but they haven't really known why. And unless they took the time to read your article, they don't necessarily understand. So you and I can kind of tag team this. I want you to take the lead on it, though, Leo, if you wouldn't mind, because you are the main editor and the main guy with Cowbell Kingdom. You put out the content, even if it's not what you've written or what you have chosen to write about. You put it out as long as it meets our standards here at Cowbell Kingdom, which typically are, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's as long as it's ethical, as long as it's fair, and then as long as it's professional. So this all stems back to one article in particular, to where the animosity between DeMarcus Cousins and Cowbell Kingdom began. Now, this was an article that I myself wrote, and we've addressed it on the Cowbell Kingdom podcast before. I wrote it back in the early parts of January. I believe it was like the second week of November. Excuse me, I'm all over the place. The second week of November, we released an article that I had written addressing the fact that, or the idea that DeMarcus Cousins actually benefited the Kings, or the Kings benefited from DeMarcus Cousins playing with a technical foul, because an image surfaced that had been circulating the internet, even though it was not necessarily completely up to date, it was circulating, and fans were taking this image and seeing the stat lines of DeMarcus Cousins pre-technical foul versus post-technical foul and seeing his actually improved stats. And they took that as, it's actually good for DeMarcus Cousins to play angry or play after he has a technical foul. It actually helps the Kings. The article addressed that. And in that article, I wrote some things and pointed out things like his anger and his getting technical fouls and his arguing takes him out of the game mentally. It has effects on his teammates and effect on the locker room, because it does, whether he wants to admit it or not, it does. And all you have to know, or all you have to see to prove that, is his past relationships with coaches and players. Now, that's not suggesting that there are problems in the locker room now, because that's not what we're saying at all. Because for the most part, I think this has been the best year for DeMarcus in terms of team chemistry. However, he's had a history of butting heads with his teammates. He's had a history of butting heads with coaches. And a lot of it stems from just this, your leader being a somewhat of sometimes a crybaby on the court, or being at least portrayed that way, or checking out mentally, or berating you for decisions that you make when he's doing these things like arguing with officials. Just all that comes into play. So that's what was addressed in the article. And the simple point was not to take any shots at Cousins, because there were no personal attacks. Everything was fact-based and backed up by statistics and history. The point was not to take any shots at DeMarcus Cousins. The point was to point out, okay, just because the stats say that he is better after a technical foul, that does not mean it helps the team. That was the purpose of the article. DeMarcus took offense to not just the idea that it had an effect on his locker room, but also that his rage, which was used in the title, is not rage at all, but rather passion, and that he just didn't like the terminology and the word use of that. And now that turned into what complications have began between you specifically, Leo, because even though I wrote the article, I have received nothing from DeMarcus Cousins in terms of like bad treatment or any kind of cursing out, but I know you have. So now I'm going to tag you in to where this story takes a turn, so you can kind of explain your side.
So again, if you guys read the column, which I highly recommend, I go step by step. Okay. When I'm reading these comments, Leo, don't feel bad, bro. He does have anger issues. Don't mess with him. Look, it's like, I just really want you guys to read this, but I will go over it. As I said, I was at an event. I was hosting an event in West Sacramento.
Leo, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Really quick. Do you mind? We have some people on the comments line asking to see your face to improve the conversation for the live stream. If you wouldn't mind switching to that. And then for those audio listeners, apologize. Now back to Leo.
Okay. We good?
Yep, go for it.
So again, I go step by step, and it all started against the San Antonio Spurs. The first thing that he says is, I'm not giving you no quotes, and it was in a very, very unprofessional manner. He tried to embarrass me and whatnot. I'm not going to get into details, but the fact of the matter is, like I said, a true professional would pull you aside and talk to you about it and say, hey, dude, I did not agree with whatever was written. And then I would have gladly clarified why that thing was written, because that's what pros do. And I've seen it. I've seen it from so many players on the Kings, right? So when a player tries to exclude a media organization just because he didn't like what was written, especially because it had nothing to do with his family, and it was nothing personal. It was all about success and failures on the court. That is beyond ridiculous, guys. And if you guys continue to, support this type of actions, man. I mean, I'm seeing all these comments. Are you not listening? That's just not the way to go about it. And I'm a bit distracted because I'm looking at one screen and I'm looking at a different screen, right? But the point of the matter is, this organization has enabled him way too many times. It's not good enough to really give him a slap on the wrist and say, don't do it, Boogie. Don't do it, Boogie. You know, it's more than that. You have to be respectful. You are the face of the organization. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I just didn't like how Coach Yeager justified his excuses yesterday. One, because he has his own beef with the Sacramento Bee, which is a whole different story. And I get it. He stood up for his guy. But if you think about it again, he is enabling him. He is saying, it's okay, Boogie. If you don't agree with someone's article, lash out at him. And yeah, he said it wasn't the right way. But if it wasn't the right way, he shouldn't do it at all. Okay? And I'm tired of this enabling of this guy just because he is the best player on his team. Just because of that. You have to be able to respect everyone around you. It's part of the agreement that the media has with the NBA. You cannot exclude someone because that is called censorship. So for all these people who continue to just bash me, educate yourselves and inform yourselves, guys, okay? And I'm being nice. And if you want to talk to me about it, I said in section 105, I'm at every single game. You can come down, talk to me about it, and I will gladly explain. And I will gladly get into details. So for all you guys who are just bashing me on Instagram, come see me, section 105.
I want to backtrack with something you said, because you were talking about how Coach Yeager addressed the media in his comments before last night's embarrassing loss in Dallas against the Mavericks. And he came on the Grant Napier show, and he was on a little under an hour ago, and he repeated a lot of his comments, but he was certainly toned down, having interacting with Grant, who he and everybody else is very aware of how critical Grant is on DeMarcus Cousins, and Grant was not one to put up with DeMarcus's antics. He believed it was Bush League, it was wrong and handled horribly by DeMarcus, which is no surprise there really from anyone involving Grant. But one thing Grant did say that I absolutely agree with, after some callers called up following that Yeager interview and took problem with what Yeager said, is Yeager's, as the head coach of the Kings, he's going to defend his players. I do agree that in some instances he is making excuses for DeMarcus and enabling DeMarcus even more, which is a problem with the Sacramento Kings organization. And if you don't believe it's a problem, you're naive, because DeMarcus Cousins has been enabled throughout his career. And unfortunately, I think the major problem with DeMarcus in this interaction with the media and these demands and this attitude that he has towards the media of, I'm not going to talk to you, or you're not worth my time, is because he's gotten away with it throughout his career here in Sacramento. He became untouchable in his mind by this organization when he screamed out George Karl, who asked for a suspension, and Vlade and the Sacramento Kings organization sided with DeMarcus Cousins. At that point, he became pretty much immortal in his mind to the Sacramento Kings franchise. That gave him full control to do whatever he wants. Yes, he was suspended after a later incident with George Karl, but still, at that point, the bet had been made. And now the Sacramento Kings and the media and DeMarcus Cousins are all having to lie in it. But I'm okay with Dave Yeager's comments and him coming out in support of his player, because that's what a head coach is supposed to do. Now, do I agree with everything Yeager said? Absolutely not. But in the grand scheme of things, I can accept, appreciate, and understand why Yeager made the comments that he made.
Again, I said, at first, okay, he's standing up for his player, right? I get it. But if you really look deep into it, he's enabling him, Matt. And that's just something that I just don't agree with. You cannot give him a slap on the wrist and say, DeMarcus, it's okay, because, Andy was out of line for talking about your brother. He didn't talk about his brother. He mentioned his brother. He mentioned something that we all know about. His brother got tased, and all he did was mention it. But with that being said, I don't agree with what he said, and I feel like that wasn't necessary. But at the same time, there are better ways of handling your situation. Getting in a guy who is 5'7" and who I just don't know how old Andy is, that is not the right way. You are a foot bigger than him. Have some respect. Don't intimidate this guy, because it's not the right thing to do. It's just a bad look, period. And I'm just tired of this organization enabling this guy, man.
Yeah, and it has been a problem, and we're reaping the rewards, or we're seeing the effect that has had on DeMarcus Cousins, on who he is. Again, I want to return to how that relates to us, because ultimately, in the long run, and we've had a lot of back and forth with a lot of people on Twitter, and for the most part, since this story has come out on Friday, at least on social media, the social media side of things, support has almost been overwhelmingly in the corner of DeMarcus, not necessarily in the corner of the B. And there's a lot of good and bad reasons for that. We're not here to debate that. A lot of people have targeted you, Leo, myself, Andy, the B. Some may be right in some instances, but in terms of myself, and I think I can speak for you, Leo, and even Andy, this isn't about us, and it shouldn't be about us. And I hope, again, I want to go back to the Bees' motives here, because I hope they weren't trying to make it a martyr situation, and they did certainly paint that picture in that article of the big bad DeMarcus Cousins beating up the poor defenseless the reporter. That's not what this is about.
No.
And people need to understand that just because there's frustration, and just because you disagree with someone, or you and I disagree with one another on something as big as this DeMarcus Cousins debate, just because we disagree does not mean there's animosity or frustration or anger or any kind of personal issues between us. Same thing goes between members of the media and DeMarcus Cousins. If DeMarcus refuses to talk to me because of an article I wrote about him, I don't take that personally.
No, you can't.
That's not the point. The point is, I have my job to do, and I write my opinion, and I write what I believe to be ethical and correct based off of what I've seen. DeMarcus Cousins chooses to either read that and use that as motivation. Whatever he wishes to do with it, that's his own business. It's not a personal issue between the two of us. Has DeMarcus taken it personally at times? Absolutely. Have I taken things personally at times? Absolutely. It's called being a human, but that's not what this is about. So when Cowbell Kingdom and I are in the locker room, and DeMarcus refuses to speak to any media while we're around, is not only not personal, but it's kind of foolish if you think about it, because in the long run, there's nothing that he's going to tell those media members that we're not going to hear or get access to, because there's ABC, there's KCRA3, there's Kings Radio, there's CSN. We can get all of his post-game quotes anywhere we want. So it's not necessarily a manner of, oh, we need to get that attention. It's we want to be able to do our jobs. And you can't really do your job effectively when you're not talking to and interacting with the best player on the team. He is the face of the franchise. There's no argument there. But again, people, there's absolutely no reason to think that there's personal animosity between us and DeMarcus Cousins. There can be moments of tension and anger and frustration, but in the long run, we have a job to do. He has a job to do, and we both want to do our jobs effectively. And this is what I tweeted out, because it has to do with the fans, it has to do with the players, and it has to do with the media. We all want the same thing. We all want the Sacramento Kings to win and to succeed, because everybody wins in that scenario. When the Sacramento Kings are winning and playing well, suddenly our ratings go up, KHDK's ratings go up, people are more interested in the team, therefore they want to read our articles more. And obviously DeMarcus Cousins looks better because he's on a winning team and he's leading a team to the promised land. The Kings organization looks better because they're finally out of the slump that they've been in. And even the Sacramento Bee does better because they're getting more readers because the team is more popular.
Of course.
Everybody wants the same thing. So we're all on the same side here. It doesn't have to be this versus that.
Absolutely. And I think we should, well, a lot of the people on Instagram want to talk Kings basketball because they are tired, just like we are, Matt, about this nonsense. I mean, to me, it's nonsense. I want to focus on the court. And like I said, I'm going to say it one more time. I want to move forward. Cowbell Kingdom wants to move forward. Matt George wants to move forward. We don't want this to be about us. It's never been about us, guys.
Right.
Okay. For the people that think it's about us, you're wrong. And, I'm tired of this. I want to talk about Kings basketball, and I want to analyze DeMarcus Cousins' failures and his brilliance on the court, okay? That's what I want to do. And, yes, he is a great individual talent. and that's who I want to cover. But again, I want to move forward, and I hope tomorrow night when I'm in that locker room, I hope that he will talk to me and he will not exclude me, because again, I don't want people to think that I'm a victim.
Right.
Because that's not what I want. All I want is to address the situation, and I want the Kings to be respectable. That's what I want for this organization. Like, that's all I want. And if the Kings win, it's easier for all of us because it's fun. It's something that we all can enjoy talking about things on the court. I'm tired about talking about how this team gets scrutinized every single year off the court issues. I'm done with that. Again, Coach Yeager said it best. This needs to end, but there needs to be a compromise. It takes two to tango, and if DeMarcus Cousins continues to hold grudges, this won't ever change whatsoever, guys. And I think we should just move on, Matt, and let's talk about Kings basketball, man.
I think that's a good idea. And again, I appreciate all the comments of people, because there's people drastically on both sides, and there's always going to be people drastically on both sides. And that's what makes the story so good. And for people wondering why the media writes articles like this out of DeMarcus Cousins, is because it gets a reaction. You can call it bad journalism, but if you want to call it bad journalism, you can't call it bad journalism when it creates this kind of reaction. That is literally the job. That is what Andy Ferrillo and Aileen are supposed to do, is spark reaction, because that brings readership. Now, even if you hate, I don't even know if readership's a word. Now, even if you hate Aileen, and even if you hate Andy, now all of a sudden you know their names a little bit more, aren't you? And now the next column they're going to put out, even if you can't stand them and even if you disregard everything they say, the next article that they put out, you're going to look at. You're going to read. Even if you don't read it all the way through, you're going to at least see the headline and see, is he talking about DeMarcus again? And then if he is, oh boy, what's he talking about now? It's called they're doing their job. DeMarcus has to understand that. And also, on the other side of things, we as media, and I'm not excluding myself from this, we have as media have to understand that this is who DeMarcus is. This is the kind of guy that he is. Is that a good excuse for him? No, I don't think it should be used as an excuse at all. And it's okay for him to be this kind of fiery, angry, or just high-strung guy if it helps him on the court, which it does. It's what makes him as dominant as he is, as long as there's a mutual respect from both sides. If you were to ask Andy right now, do you respect DeMarcus Cousins as a player? I believe 100% that he would say yes. If you asked DeMarcus Cousins, do you respect Andy as a journalist? I don't think he would say yes right now. And I think that's where the problem is. Not completely with DeMarcus Cousins. There needs to be a mutual respect on both sides. Everybody is to blame in some instance, but in the grand scheme of things, I think the biggest blame is on DeMarcus for how he handled this, because it could have been handled better. But nobody is blameless. And I think it's not one side needs to bring the flower and fix everything. I think there just needs to be a mutual ground met with everybody so that we can move forward from this. And unfortunately, if that ground cannot be met, then some things have to change. And when you look at that conversation, which is a completely other conversation that we can have in the future, when change needs to happen, you need to look at the one thing that has been consistent throughout all these years of turmoil and struggle, which unfortunately has been DeMarcus Cousins. But again, that's another conversation for another time.
Done.
And believe me, I would love to make a trade. Yeah, I want to make a trade of DeMarcus Cousins based off of his on-court production and issues and things just not working out between a player and a franchise, not between a hothead and media of the city that he lives in. It shouldn't come into play. That's what we want to focus on as media. That's what we want to do our job. So in the grand scheme of things, Cousins, DeMarcus, you need to handle that better, and you need to respect media as people just trying to do their jobs, even if you don't necessarily agree or like what they put out. And then media recognize that this is who DeMarcus is. And if you're going to try and swipe at him and make these digs at him, you can't be surprised or play the victim when he comes at you like this, because you've seen this pattern and this is absolutely who he is. So
yeah.
Put it to bed. Any final thoughts, Leo?
That's it. People really want to talk about Malachi and why he's not playing. And, that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up too. So I'm good with the whole DMC things. Let's talk some Kings basketball, Matt George.
Sounds good to me, man. And I'm going to throw it over to you because you're our resident Reno Bighorns expert, and you always give really good updates just on Reno, and that includes Malachi. So I'm going to throw that over to you in just a second. But before that, we want to let you know, guys, hey, the Kings play tomorrow. And it's their first game home in a little bit, over a weekend or something like that. Yeah. But it's the first home game since all this stuff has come out. So whether you like it or not, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be an extra air to this. Plus, they're playing the Portland Trailblazers, which in my mind are one of the most exciting teams to watch.
Lillard. I want to watch Dame Dollar play every single night.
Absolutely. And so we want to encourage you that if you want to go to that game, Ticket IQ has got your back. They're the best place to go. These guys are the go-to for all of your Kings ticketing needs. Ticket IQ has the best prices from all ticket sources. That includes access to exclusive offers directly from the Sacramento Kings themselves. Be sure to head to the App Store right now on Google Play or just download the Ticket IQ app. Receive $20 off your first purchase right then and there. There's really no reason to search through so many different apps looking for the best Kings tickets. Ticket IQ is your one-stop shop. So again, check them out. If you want to go to that game or any future games, you really need to go there and check it out if you're an individual ticket buyer. And again, like Leo said, we are always there. We try and be there always as much as we can, and we try to be as accessible as we can. So if you want to share your thoughts or talk to us and get a better idea, maybe more personally as to what's been going on, we want to talk to you, and we would love to answer those questions. And we want to encourage you that there will not be any kind of personal digs or any unfair treatment, both from us to you or from us to DeMarcus Cousins. That's not who we are, and that's not what we want to do in the light that we want to paint ourselves in. So please, if you come to the game, come up to us, ask us questions, talk to us about this, and we in turn want to ask you questions about what you think and how this affects you as a fan, because in the grand scheme of things, that's all what matters, really, right?
That's all that matters, guys. And again, Malachi Richardson should be playing right now. And as Doug Christie said in the post-game show, I believe I made this tweet, or I tweeted this out. I said, he, like me, believes he should be starting right now. And this is my reasoning. Ben McLemore is not the answer at that position. We all know who he is. We know what he is capable of doing, okay? Aaron Aflalo. And I know Matt George is going to do a story on his struggles, and he's going to bring up a lot of stats.
About a week late on that one.
Yeah, and that's okay. But Aflalo has struggled, and I think it was Dave, right, that broke the news about him not wanting to check in. That's a whole nother fiasco. And then you're left with Garrett Temple and Malachi, right? Garrett Temple has been a jewel of a player to watch. Like, I love GT, and he's such a great locker room presence, and he's just a joy to watch every night because he gives it his all. He's like to me, he's like a better version of Tony Allen, who has offensive game. And as we stated in that GT article, GT is shooting 57.9 from that, top inner circle of the 3-point line. Like, this guy is shooting lights out, and I think it's 42.9 overall percent from beyond the arc. This guy is, I'm not going to say Doug Christie, but he's the closest thing we've had to Doug Christie. And yeah, if you start him, I want Malachi coming off the bench because this guy has this moxiness about him where, Malachi Richardson has told me personally, I'm ready to play and I'm ready to make an impact. He knows it. And for some strange reason, Dave Yeager he simply does not believe in playing rookies. And I just don't know what to say about that, Matt. And, Malachi is big enough, he is physical enough, and he is good enough to shoot the rock, to play defense, and really give the Kings that spark. If you want to put him with the starters, Rudy Gay, DeMarcus Cousins, he's gonna get open shots. If you bring him off the bench, he's gonna give you that hustle, and he's gonna give you that effort every single night because he is a rookie trying to make a name for himself. And I have covered him, and I believe I've had the most access to him. So, and I like his mentality, I really do, and it's just one of those things where I'm in shock to why he hasn't been playing, man.
And it's surprising. You mentioned that Coach Yeager is hesitant or unwilling to play rookies, and that's surprising based off of Yeager's background of having coached in the D League for so many years. But that being said, he also understands and recognizes the importance of the D League. He also will probably know better than anyone the difference between that jump from the D League to the NBA.
Yeah.
So clearly, in his mind, as much as he sees Malachi Richardson succeeding in the D League at that level, clearly there's something with Richardson's game, and I don't believe it's just because he's a rookie, that he doesn't feel translates to the NBA yet, or is just not quite ready for the NBA yet. And in that decision, because I agree with you, Richardson has been very, very, very impressive, and I think he can be someone that could really, really help this team in the grand scheme of things, because he could be the shooting guard that the Kings really haven't had since Kevin Martin, maybe on and off Marcus Thornton. He can be that guy potentially based off of what we've seen in Reno. And I'm a big fan of his game. But ultimately, in Yeager, we trust in that decision-making because he understands the gap between the D-League and between that and the NBA. And he also understands that time is really on Richardson's side. While we may not think that as Sacramento Kings fans, because we've been in this hole for so long, in the grand scheme of things, Yeager's only been in control of the Kings for 6 months now. The season is, even though it's, we're closing in on halfway over already, there's still plenty of time to go. And who knows where Malachi's going to end up towards the end, what he's going to do with a full summer of work with the Kings. Who knows where he's going to be and what kind of player he's going to be. So it's hard to preach patience because, trust me, Kings fans, I'm right there with you. I'm extremely impatient. But I think in this situation, I can take comfort in Yeager's decision-making when it comes to the development of Malachi Richardson. But I would not be surprised, especially as the Kings' playoff hopes go down the tubes, which I'm not saying it is going to happen or it's in the tubes right now. But based off of their track record, if that does indeed happen, I could see Malachi getting some serious minutes towards the end of the season.
Yeah, but when you're down by 20 the entire game against the Mavericks, there is no need to have McLemore out there or even Garrett Temple. You need to develop your young players. You need to give a shot to Malachi and to Scow. And someone brought up a good point. Malachi did play zone in college, so that might be a concern for Dave Yeager because obviously Dave wants good defenders out there, but just in that short span of time that we saw him play against, I believe it was Houston, and I've watched him play in person, 3 times, and he is physical enough, and I've seen him play in Summer League when he was guarding Buddy Hield, okay? Buddy Hield went off. I think he had 17 points in the third quarter, but if you watched him play, Buddy Hield worked for every single point. Like, Malachi is a very good physical defender. He's tall. He's big. So, to me, if that's Yeager's excuse to not play him because he played zone and he might think that he's not good enough or he might not understand his schemes defensively, then, again, Yeager knows best, right? Because he's with them every single day. But Yeager hasn't been with Malachi because he's been in the D League. So I guess he has to earn his time. And the Kings haven't had any time to practice because they haven't been home. They've been on the road. I get that. But again, if you're getting blown out by the 6th win Dallas Mavericks, now it's 7, I think, because they beat the Kings last night. Then you should play this guy, man, and see what you have in extended minutes. Honestly, if you give him a shot to start and play next to DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay, he won't be much of a liability because if he is, then you pull him out. He's going to get open shots, and trust me, he is shot trigger happy. He will pull the rock every single time, and you love that about a guy because that's his job, a shooting guard who wants to shoot the ball and who doesn't want to be passive. He wants his name in the box score, Matt.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys, as my one of my hosts on the show that I produce in the morning, Nate Goodyear, would say, that he knows the ball is round and he knows to shoot it. So he's not afraid to do that, which is for some a position that's called the shooting guard position. The Kings haven't had a shooter, consistent shooter in that shooting guard position, which leads to a conversation that we could have on Aaron Aflalo. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because there hasn't been much yet that has come out about it other than the report by Carmichael Dave of KHTK that he refused to come into the game or check into the game when his number was called against Dallas. Clearly he's frustrated, and I certainly pick up on that just by trying to talk to him and interact with him and by his body language on the bench and in the locker room and even during warmups. Something just seems off about him, and it's this curse that has plagued the Sacramento Kings shooting guard position of players that are good, solid shooters and role players that come to Sacramento and just struggle. And there are multiple reasons as to why you could point to that. You could say it's something to do with DeMarcus. You could say it's something to do with Sacramento. You could say it's a curse. You could say Oogie Boogie Monster attacked him. Whatever you want to say. There's multiple reasons why a shooter can struggle, and these slumps can be so frustrating for especially veterans like Aaron, who have probably never really struggled this much in their career. In the grand scheme of things, though, I do believe things can and will get better, and it's encouraging to point out. And now, this is a big cup of Kool-Aid that Carmichael Dave likes to drink a lot, and I'm more skeptical with it. But in this case, it can be encouraging because throughout all this animosity and all these issues and all these frustrations, the Kings are still really, let's see here, they're 2 games out of the 8th spot in the West. Now, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs because, let's be honest, I don't think they are. I don't think they're good enough. I don't think they're going to make it. However, there still is a lot of time in this season for them to turn it around. And if they are able to find something that works and turn that corner, there is a possibility. They're not in too deep of a hole that they can't climb out of. Now, I'm choosing to look at that as something that's encouraging. One thing I have no inside information other than just my interaction with my co-hosts at KHTK, interaction with front office members and players in the Kings locker room and at the Golden One Center. But we would be fools to think that some kind of move was not coming. I think the trade deadline is going to be a very interesting time for the Sacramento Kings this year in regards to Ben McLemore, in regards to Rudy Gay, in regards to even Aaron Aflalo, maybe even DeMarcus Cousins. Something is brewing and something is coming because it's clear things cannot remain as they are because they're not getting any better. And I'm curious what you, the listeners, tend to think about that, because I know a lot of people are harping for trading DeMarcus Cousins. I know a lot of people are harping for trading Rudy Gay. In the grand scheme of things, a change or a move is coming. So buckle up, because I'm sure the months of January and February are going to be quite the interesting time to follow these Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, I truly believe that Rudy Gay will get dealt before the actual deadline. Now, I can't confirm to where, but I just really believe that's a huge possibility. As far as DeMarcus Cousins, he's not going anywhere this season. I've said this from the start of the year, right? I just don't see it. I do see him extending his contract soon, right? Because the Kings have the most money to offer him. It's a great business move for him, but just because they extend him does not mean they won't trade him. Right. And there's a huge misconception about that. Well, if he's signed, he's staying here for the next 5 years. No, it does not mean that. It means that the Kings have the most money to offer him. Right. So
sign and trades are common in the league.
Exactly. So that's that. And, you know, that's something that people really have to take into account. Just because he signs with the team or he extends his contract does not mean the team won't trade him. And just like December 15th, now you can trade guys who you signed over the offseason. And if Aflalo's not happy for whatever reason, and I think we all know why, his playing time and his overall production has gone down, then you might have to make some moves. But again, Vlade won't make a move just to make a move, man.
I want to address some comments made on our live stream really quick, but before we do that, as we approach the final 10 minutes of the podcast here, I wanted to let you know that if you're a basketball fan or simply love the Sacramento Kings, hoopcats.com is the place to go when it comes to NBA autographs, memorabilia, trading cards, everything you could possibly want. That's right. If you want to sign Cousins or Willie Cauley-Stein rookie card, Hoopcats.com has got them. They have them right now. Make sure to like their Instagram page, ask for the CK special, and you can get some great deals. And they've got some really cool stuff. Even if you're not looking to buy anything, just browse and see all the neat stuff they have out there. Really some cool memorabilia. Jay Dilla has been very active here on our comment line, and we appreciate everybody that's been very active, and we'd like to address all of you if we could, but we simply don't have the time to. He said two things here in a short span of time that I want to address. The first thing is he said in regards to our comments about the Kings being on the cusp of the playoffs and change could be happening. He says, I feel like I hear this every year. That's a good reason, because you do. And that's the frustrating part, is it seems like this purgatory, as we've called it, that the Kings just can't get out of, and they're in this same spot, and they can't be good enough and they can't be bad enough, it seems. And it's frustrating because we keep going in the same vicious circle. And no matter if we change ownership, the look of the logo, jerseys, arena, coaches, it doesn't seem to change, or even free agent signings. It's a frustrating cycle that we've been in. So that's a natural feeling to feel like you do hear this every year, and it's okay to be frustrated like that, because we do. There's no quick fix to it, or we would have it fixed by now. The other thing he brings up is he asks, does DeMarcus Cousins really want to stay in Sacramento? In my opinion, absolutely. And there's my skeptical opinion, and there's my positive opinion. And I'll start with the positive opinion, because DeMarcus, he is a loyal guy, and everything about him screams loyalty. If you are on his good side, if you are his brother, and not just by blood, but if you go to war with him on the court, I mean, look at his relationship with John Wall, look at his relationship with head coach Calipari. You see that bond that he builds with people, and it becomes a brotherhood to where there's that strong loyalty there. And Cousins responds to loyalty unlike any player I've ever seen. That means the world to him. He has this loyal bond with Sacramento, and if you don't believe that, all you have to do is point at what he does in the community. And if you go on Twitter right now and check out my Twitter at MattGeorgeKHDK, I literally just retweeted something that the Sacramento Kings tweeted out, which is yet again another picture of Mr. Cousins in the community helping make a little girl's day by buying her it looks like a doll for Christmas, and to their right is a shopping cart full of just cool toys and great stuff, part of his Santa Cuz promotion. That kind of stuff screams loyalty and love for the city of Sacramento. So that's the positive side. Now, the skeptical, kind of facetious side, which I have to mention, is you talk about enabling. DeMarcus Cousins knows that he's the king of this castle. DeMarcus pretty much knows that he's untouchable, and he says that he wants to win, and I believe that he wants to win because everybody wants to win. They're competitive. However, he knows that he has full control of everything, pretty much everything here. He can do what he wants. Yeah. He is the man. He is so plugged in. He has the keys. This is his franchise. He is the face. And with the new collective bargaining agreement, he's going to get a fat payday if he chooses to re-sign with Sacramento. So all of that plays in favor of him staying here. So there's the positive side and there's the skeptical side, but I think both tie together. But to answer your question, Jay Dilla, in a really, really long and convoluted way, yes, I absolutely believe that he does want to stay here in Sacramento. He hasn't shown me a reason not to. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and as I stated earlier, he's full of enablers around him, and again, you would take that job, Matt. I mean, I would take that job,
Hell
right?
Yeah.
Because it's a dream gig. He's gonna get paid over $200 million, probably 6 years, $200 million, and if you're the man and you're untouchable, why not stay? And I know winning is important, but he's 26 years old, man. I mean, he won't feel that same pressure until he gets 30, just like Rudy Gay is. Like right now, Rudy wants to win, right? Mm-hmm. And I think they are in two separate situations where DeMarcus is the man right now. So there's no need for him to go elsewhere. And again, I haven't seen it, and I just don't believe that he will attract other players to come play with him. And by other players, I mean the 9 other guys who are better than DeMarcus Cousins. And yeah, DeMarcus is in my top 10, but I can count 9 players who are better and who I know he will respect. And again, my personal opinion on this is he will not respect you if you are not better than him. And I'm on record saying this, Matt. I said DeMarcus should be your second option if you want to be a championship team. And again, fans are so afraid that he goes somewhere else, he will win the championship. Let him go somewhere else because he will not win one here because the Kings are not good enough, and the Kings don't have that type of reputation to reel in a superstar to play next to him.
Right.
So and that's the fear of people. Well, what if he goes and wins? I think he deserves that. Like, both the city of Sacramento and DeMarcus Cousins deserve a fresh start. They both can benefit from a change of scenery. Yes or no, Matt?
I absolutely believe you're correct. And I've gone out a number of times and said, I just don't think it can work here. And it's not any one particular's fault. I think a lot of blame rests on Cousins' shoulders. I think even more blame sometimes rests on the shoulders of the Sacramento Kings front office. It's just the fact of the matter is it just hasn't worked. And why continue to bang your head against the same wall? You can make arguments all day long, and I've heard them all, for DeMarcus Cousins staying, why they should keep him, for why they should get rid of him. It can be a never-ending cycle of arguments that you can make, but ultimately a decision has to be made. Now, if the Kings make the decision to stick with DeMarcus Cousins, they need to prove to him, they need to prove to their fans, and they need to, quite frankly, prove to themselves, why are things going to be different? If we give him this $200 million contract and basically commit to him most likely as a career king, if not close to a career king, why can we believe things are going to be different? How are we going to change and make things different from the past 6 years? If they can't convince themselves of that or find a viable solution, then they need to get rid of him and start fresh. And I think DeMarcus Cousins deserves as much. Cousins is the best center in this league, bar none. You cannot make an argument about that. Sit down, DeAndre Jordan. I don't know why you make all NBA first team over DeMarcus. Yeah. Marc Gasol, you can make an argument. It's close, but still, I believe DeMarcus Cousins is a more dominant player than Marc Gasol, even though I'm a big fan of Marc Gasol's game. In the grand scheme of things, he is too good and too dominant and too fun to watch to be on a team that can barely win 30 games a year for his entire career. He belongs in the postseason, and he can help a team win a championship. And I think teams know that, but they're scared whether or not they want to take that risk based off of what they've seen. So in the long term, and I think Vlade's thinking about it more and more every day, and he probably has migraines over it, but a decision has to be made, and it has to be made this season. The Kings can't continue to put it off. It has to be made this year. I know where I stand on it. We know where you stand on it, Leo. And I know a lot of fans are split down the middle. So we're going to wrap up the podcast with asking you, what would you do? Do you believe that it can work with Cousins here? And if so, put together a plan, and not just a vague go out and get a superstar to play with Cousins plan, because it's not realistic. Give me a viable reason as to why you think it can work here and what the Kings need to do. And if you agree with us and think that it just can't work here, talk about why you feel that and what you think the Kings should or could or might or will do with DeMarcus Cousins, because there's plenty of options out there and a lot of stuff can happen. And even if we try and write down every scenario possible, I don't think we could do it before our hands either fall off or we run out of paper. It's just impossible. So in the long term, a decision has to be made, and it's not an easy one, and it's going to be a roll of the dice either way. But what I want from my organization, what I want from my Sacramento Kings, what I think the city of Sacramento wants is complete faith and 100% trust in the decision that they make, and saying, this is what we're going with going forward. This is what we've committed to. We're not going to wish-wash on it. These are our standards, and this is the best way we think to achieve those standards and achieve that goal. And if they can do that, then what more can you ask out of your franchise?
Agreed. And I do want to apologize because I'm looking back and forth and I'm distracted, and I haven't really been my top tier self. But, Emmanuel is saying we are doing a giveaway tomorrow at the game, and it's an autographed card by some players, right? But we have three different options. And I do want to pose a question out there. Do you want a signed Ben McLemore with a DeMarcus Cousins card, or a signed Vlade Divac card with a DeMarcus card, or a signed Willie Cauley-Stein with a I think that's his own card. So yeah, let me know what you guys want on Instagram, on YouTube. Comment which one do you want. But yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to say, man. I think we addressed everything. I don't think I addressed, I don't think I addressed it the way that I did in my column, because I'm all over the place. But you get the gist of it. I don't like the fact that they continue to enable him, and there needs to be something done. And I think justice has to be made, Matt.
I think I speak for everybody here as I just say, we just want to move on.
That's it.
We want to move forward, and that means us as media, we just want to be able to do our jobs and try and reestablish a positive relationship with DeMarcus Cousins, because I've seen the happy, just ecstatic, funny, and outgoing DeMarcus Cousins, and I love that DeMarcus Cousins. I love that player, and I do believe that he could be a phenomenal NBA talent, and he can be a champion. And I hope beyond hopes that he can do that here in Sacramento, and they can find a way to make that a reality. I would rather be proved wrong if it means success for this franchise, and I'm sure thousands upon thousands of Kings fans and even NBA fans in general would agree with me. So, but in the grand scheme of things, we just want to move on. We just want to move forward, and we just want to see Sacramento Kings return to the promised land that they belong, because the city of Sacramento deserves it. The Golden One Center deserves it. DeMarcus Cousins deserves it. The Sacramento Bee deserves it. That's just what we want, and that's what we all are so desperately fighting for. So ultimately a therapy session here on the Cowbell Kingdom podcast. We got a lot out there, and I'm sure there's plenty more we could have said. Again, if you want to ask questions, reach out to us on social media, please do. If you want to talk to us in person, we will be at the game tomorrow night and in future games to come. Come up to us, talk to us, interact with us.
Section 105.
Yep, Section 105. We're right at the top by all the computers, looking like we're doing something important. I promise you we're not. But come up there, interact with us, and chat with us, and we would love to further and continue this conversation on a more personal level. But until then, for my partner, Leo Beas, my name is Matt George. Thank you guys so much for taking the time with us. For all the live listeners who stayed with us, you guys are awesome. For all those audio listeners listening later, you're just as awesome. We appreciate all of you. Join the conversation, answer all the questions we've thrown out there, pose your own, whatever you want to do. We love it. And we can't wait to see you in future podcasts to come. Have a good night, everybody, and go Kings.